Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and today's episode is like 8 months in the running, to be honest. It's 8 months overdue because this is an entrepreneur that I was introduced to at the very beginning of this year. So it's a real treat that we get to have him here on the air to spread his knowledge and his brilliance and all the goodness that he puts into the world. Because I'll tell you one thing about this guy is that if you're a business owner or you have a brand or you put so much of your heart and passion into what you do, and you've always thought to yourself, I wish everybody could understand and read about and hear why we do the things we do and how much of ourselves we put into it. Today's guest, this is your guy. So let me introduce you to Adam Belmont. Adam is incredible at so many different things. And one thing that I really love about him is he unleashes the power of what it means to be a true solopreneur. And he does that by merging his big agency experience with the nimbleness of being a solopreneur, guiding brands in launching scroll-stopping creative campaigns in such a way that consumers experience the aha moment, that light bulb moment where they just get who the brand is and why they are. His expertise runs deep across consumer, lifestyle, and executive communications. Ownable brand moments. I love the way he phrases that. National and 360 media campaigns, product and service launches, trend spotting, and much more. As adept as Adam is at providing high-level senior PR counsel and strategic guidance, he's also super hands-on, helping to implement every aspect of communications plans and all of that experience. I'm super grateful that he's here with us today, so I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Adam Belmont. Adam, man, oh man, it is so good to have you here. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Like you said, long overdue. And, with an intro like that, I mean, I think that's how I could enter any room in my house.
Dude,
it'll never get old.
It also means, though, that you've got a lot to live up to. So I'm super excited about our conversation, but we've got to start with you. I obviously tease listeners with your bio, but take us beyond the bio. Who's Adam? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, I mean, my whole career and background is focused on strategic comms and PR. I've grown up in big agency life. I spent my post-grad years in New York City, so I worked at Ogilvy for a number of years, worked at a mid-sized firm for a number of years more. And so I love just kind of working with all different types of brands, big, small, and all the in-betweens. So it's great to be able to kind of take my big agency and big brand background and be able to apply it to brands of all shapes and sizes, including startups.
Yeah, I love that overview. But Adam, you've got to introduce listeners to A to B strategies because I'm going to want to go deep into all the cool ways that you operate and how much value you put into the world. So introduce us to that moment where this went from being an idea in your head of saying, I should go out on my own, to actually making that decision. What did you launch? What did you found? And of course, how's that entrepreneurial journey up to this point?
Yeah, no, thanks, Brian. So, I mean, I had never thought about going out on my own. My whole kind of trajectory was stay in the New York City area, be in the corporate world forever, be kind of a power couple with my wife and just kill it out there. And, and I had for as long as I've known my wife, I've known my father-in-law, and he's a entrepreneur his entire career in life. And he's always saying, Adam, why don't you go out on your own? Why don't you go out on your own? And I'm like, well, first, I'm 25. I don't know. I guess I could if I wanted to, but I need some experience. And I kept saying that until more recent years. I won't share my age. You're not going to get out of me, Brian. But I was like, you know what? I could do this. And after a lot, I think growing up in the big agency world has been a huge help in terms of navigating who I am and what I can do and how I can support. And I feel like now has been the time, just 1 year ago, after 15 years in the big agency world, where I can say to myself, you know what, maybe I can bet on myself and give this a whirl. So far in the journey and not looking back.
Heck yeah, I love it. Adam, I'll confess to you while we're on the air together that I struggle to tell people just how awesome you are because it feels bad putting you into any one box that people might label your work as. It feels underserving to just chalk it down to PR. It feels underserving to chalk it up to kind of this broad, vague category of communications because there's so much that goes into what you do with regards to uncovering those stories, understanding the emotional ties and connections there. Obviously, you have such a brilliant business and strategic mind of understanding how all these things interact together to actually facilitate business growth, which is the goal at the end of the day. So when you think about the nature of your works, that I don't have to put you into a box, what's the way that you articulate this stuff?
Yeah, I kind of help people understand that communications is influencing how people feel about a brand, a person, an individual, whoever, whatever it might be. And my role is to help influence that feeling and to figure out how to take that idea, that very ethereal idea, and transform it through actual tactical implementation and strategy, practice, and whatnot. So my whole repertoire of what I do spans a whole bunch of different areas of specialty and focus that I won't bore you with, but my role is to figure out what makes sense at what time for what brand or individual. So that's really kind of what, and my whole background is in the really mainly anchored in the consumer brand space, both products and services across all different categories. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about how I kind of try to approach it. And it's my job at the end of the day to figure out what levers to pull that make the most sense for any given goal and strategy.
Yeah, I love that, especially considering I would imagine that you very frequently navigated both sides of, or both ends, extreme ends of the spectrum. Whereas on one end, I would imagine a lot of brands, a lot of businesses say, we don't even know where that story is going to come from, because so much of marketing is, of course, an experiment where we have to see what resonates with the audience. We don't get to choose that as much as we wish that we could. But then on the other side of the spectrum is those brands that have such a personal history, that have such a personal why and a personal mission. And for them, it's a question of how do we filter that? How do we condense it into something that we can actually put into the market? And I think all of us as entrepreneurs have been on both sides of that spectrum where there's so much we want to say, but we don't know how to say it. How do you begin to make sense of all of that noise? How do you sift through? I'm actually picturing one of those sand sifting things where there's probably a lot of goodness in there, but you do have to figure out just what are those key things. Does it happen through conversations? Does it happen through you just geeking out and poking around a business? How do you begin to make sense of that landscape?
All the above. It all starts with acting as a sponge and taking in as much as I possibly can. There's no such thing as overload, sensory overload in the beginning. And really, it is just about figuring out how to distill. And there's obviously ways I have and strategies I have to figure out how to distill it at the end of the day. But it's really, and I think that's where my experience comes into play, and intuition. And never underestimate, especially in this space of strategic communications, public relations, all the above, that the intuition and figuring out what will make people resonate is really important. And I think that's only baked in my experience. So I feel like that really helps me bring something forward that just is different and new, but also kind of baked into experience and a level of understanding.
Yeah, I love that. But Adam, you kind of make me want to take back something that I said a little earlier, because I said I don't want to put you in the PR box at all, but I actually do want to go there with you, because knowing the importance of the work that you do, I feel like PR kind of becomes this thing that we think about in terms of crisis. I think about how often, does an oil tanker spill all of their oil in the ocean, and frantically they're PR. They're just trying to have a good face throughout all of that. But fortunately, I've never experienced that. I hope most of our listeners have never experienced times of crisis. But at the same time, thinking through that PR landscape and having things to say when things are good, when we have positive news to announce, I think that's something that's often overlooked. Is it's easy to see PR in the mainstream media, but not think about it in terms of our own small businesses. How do you help people make that decision of when's the right time for PR? And I'm sure that there's all sorts of right times for PR. What are some of those PR worthy milestones or announcements, or do we have to wait for moments to celebrate? For the podcast, I was always excitedly waiting for episode 1000. I was like, then we're going to have something that's PR worthy. And we pulled off some PR efforts back then. But how should we be viewing this on an ongoing, future looking basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about being proactive and not reactive. If you're just reactive and serving as the grim reaper of crisis and waiting for something terrible to happen to make your presence known, that's just the most backwards way to go about it. So it's really about not, if you have news to share, great, let's figure out the best way to get it out there, but not to wait to have news to share to make waves out there. Because the biggest thing that I think brands would benefit from really understanding, and sometimes it's difficult when you're living and breathing and drinking the Kool-Aid every day, is that people care about what they care about, and they don't really care about what brands care about. So the whole point is trying to figure out, in terms of your milestones or big company announcements and whatnot, how can you translate what the company cares about into in a way that the general public, consumers at large, care about their life. So how does this announcement serve you, and what this means for the company perspective? What does this mean for the people you're trying to reach? How does this impact their day-to-day, their life? Where humans are nothing if not self-centered at times, and it's a human truth that we have to understand and embrace to some degree to realize that in order to reach who we're trying to talk to here, we got to get into their head and less into ours as the brand.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to pick on two adjectives from your bio right now because I'm really excited for you to talk about them. And that is scroll stopping and creative. Because Adam, a lot of us business owners, we don't feel creative. We don't identify as creatives in our day-to-day lives. And a lot of us wonder, that's kind of the biggest currency of all is attention in today's world. But people are scrolling quickly. So why scroll stopping and creative? How does that factor into the work that you do?
I mean, you got to make it memorable. We're in information sensory overload. I know I mentioned I love sensory overload when I'm onboarding with a new client and whatnot, and that's fantastic. But having there's some damage to that happens when you're scrolling, doom scrolling on anything and consuming news from any source all day, every day. There's so much bombarding our lives and attention spans that it's got to be really unique and interesting to stop somebody, but also very quick. And if you have some real long speech that you're going to have, it's not going to hit unless all the country's cameras are on you. In the case of the president or whatnot. But barring that, you got to make it quick and impactful for it to cut through all the noise that everybody is consuming, whether from their screens or in front of them as they walk down the street.
And it's hard to do that. I always think about that Abraham Lincoln quote of, if you want me to give a 5-hour speech, I'm ready to go right now. If you want me to give a 5-minute speech, I'm going to need 5 hours to prepare. It's so hard to condense this stuff into those small digestible things. And as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as brands in so many different capacities, that's the hardest part, is we know so much about what we do that it's not always easy to read the label when we're inside the jar. And I think it's really cool that you've got that vantage point walking into companies and saying, hey, let's make sense of this stuff. I also want to pick on that ownable brand moments. I think that that's such a cool thing that I've seen you emphasize in the way you talk about this stuff, because we've obviously had incredible branding experts here on the show, and so frequently we get into that age-old cliche of your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And sometimes that feels like it's out of our hands, it's out of our control. But the fact that you hone in on those ownable brand moments, what do those look like? How can we create that sort of environment around our businesses?
Yeah, Brian, I think it comes down to authenticity. You got to be true to who you are as a brand, and not try to, you can try to go into different lanes that you don't usually live in. That's cool. But you'd also want it to come from an authentic space. What's the reason you're doing that? So I think it really all just comes down to authenticity. And in that aspect, nobody else can replicate what you do in the way you do it. That's what makes you unique, and that's what makes the brand unique. And that's what you need to leverage, is those differentiators in a really authentic way, because people want to connect with things that only make sense or only real or are authentic, whether with their relationships with people or brands. So that really is kind of the most important thing in terms of having that resonate, because that's what's going to allow them to connect with you in the way that you want them to.
Adam, I want to go deeper there with you, because I feel like authentic is a word that's thrown out so frequently, and I'll call myself out here that in my early 20s, I obviously I'm very excitable. I have a lot of energy, and that shines through. And in literally anything I do, I can't hide that stuff. And so when I was in my early 20s and I started a marketing agency, though, to me, it was this weird balance of figuring out who I am as a CEO and founder versus who and what and why the brand is. And hearing people talk about authentic, I always felt like we see classic example of what a personal brand is. Tony Robbins to me is such a good example of a personal brand, because it doesn't matter what Tony Robbins does, you get the Tony Robbins brand along with his personality. And so navigating that in my early 20s, I was thinking, I know who Brian is as a founder. What is the brand? Is the brand me? Do I have to give the brand its own voice? Do I have to find the authentic version of who and what and why the brand is? I didn't know how to navigate that, Adam, because it is so confusing. When you deal with my agency, you are dealing with me. So like, I can't help but have my personality involved in it. But as we continue to scale, things change and it takes on a life of its own. So it's a loaded question that I'm not exactly sure comes with a question, Adam, but I'm trusting you to make sense of it for listeners.
Well, Brian, I've come at this from a different vantage point myself. As a solopreneur, I am the brand. I am, the name of the company is A to B Strategies, my initials, everything. So not because I love talking about myself, Brian. That is definitely not the truth by any means. But I have to be able to share myself with others. And I think it's great that your personal touch, your approach, your personality is imbued across your company values and how the company presents itself. And so I don't have to, as a solopreneur, I just have to worry about how I present myself to the world, but I say embrace it. And I think I take that as a superpower. And one way that I love talking about what I do isn't really always about the different campaigns I've done or the case studies I can share. It's really about connecting with people and sharing who I am. And if you see my LinkedIn posts and whatnot, that's what it's really about, that I cover. It's really not always about the work. If it is about the work, it's about the work through my lens and my vantage point, but it's really about who I am as a person. And that's what I hope connects with others and can use that in connecting brands with people as well.
I want to go there with you while we're on the air together, Adam, talking about solopreneurship, because something that I really respect and admire about your approach is how much you own your advantages. And even in your bio, talking about the nimbleness of a solopreneur, that's something that I started my very first business when I was 19. And I remember building that first ever website. I wanted to put we everywhere. Like on the about page, I was like, we do this and we stand for this. And we was very much me in my college dorm room. And so to me, it felt felt
and
like
Brian, that wasn't French, right? Were you learning French at the same time? Rosetta Stone? No? Duolingo?
We of course. And so for me at the time though, like I wanted to appear as having a team, and part of it was me manifesting it, and sure enough, like we did end up growing to a team of 20, which was a ton of fun. But I really, in retrospect, I really wish that I dug in to those building blocks of my own growth journey, and I see how much you embrace that and you use that in your messaging. I know that when I work with A to B strategies, I'm working directly with you, Adam, as the founder, as someone who brings so much experience to the table. Talk to us about owning that, because I know a lot of listeners, especially early on in their entrepreneurial journeys, it's a real struggle. And I'd love for you, with how authentically and vulnerably you talk about this stuff, just to share some of your insights on how you've managed to step into that and use it as your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, to your point on the we versus me, I'm all about the we language too. I use both interchangeably. I've been starting to use it in proposals more of the we, and I see no issue with that. You want it to appear as the brand and the company, if you're using one as opposed to your own name. I think that's a situation where it totally makes sense to present yourself even as larger than you, an entity larger than yourself. But I think in terms of presenting myself to the world and whatnot, it's just, in solopreneurs in general, there's no way but through. And if you got to embrace even the discomfort in talking about yourself. And as someone who is a stereotypical comms guy, who always stays behind the shadows, never should be quoted, never should be interviewed, it's always pushing other people into the spotlight, that was honestly hard for me. And that was a real growth opportunity for me as I started on my solo journey here. It was really shining the spotlight on myself and stepping into that light, as opposed to pushing other people into it. And the only way I've navigated through that is there's no other way but through. So I've kind of embraced that and continue to this day, because that's the only way to make it work and have people understand who you are. And you got to put yourself out there, just as I ask executives to every day.
Adam, I'm going to totally just jump right in there and use you as an example here as somebody who just puts themselves out there. One thing I've really loved about since getting to know you as a fellow entrepreneur is following you on LinkedIn. And we're going to drop those links at the end of today's episode. But your posts are so
you're getting
varied.
Into dangerous territory now, Brian. Careful where you're going now.
It's true. But I'm going to say, Adam, the variance in your content, it makes me feel good no matter when and where it is that I read your stuff, because sometimes it's a super emotional story, like a personal story that you tie in with business, and it makes us think about life, not just business, to be honest. And I really appreciate that about you. But then there's also times where it's just like I get to follow along with what Adam's doing, and I like that, because even though you and I don't get to talk every week, it's cool feeling like I know what you're up to. And then there's just really clever content marketing strategies. Like, I'm going to call out one post that you made 3 days ago. Listeners, this is the entirety of Adam's post. 1, like this post. 2, tell me what you like about it. Adam, that post got 49 comments and a whole bunch of likes. You've got to talk to us about the strategy behind your LinkedIn content, because I think it's so brilliant. You do it better than most people that I've ever witnessed.
Thanks, Brian. You're to have to go back into this other post of mine I made a few weeks back that said, age yourself with your first job. And I got almost 1,000 comments on that post. And people, there's, for that specifically, there's a sense of nostalgia, a sense of everybody remembers where they were at a certain time of their life, for example, their first job and whatnot, and they want to share it with them. And I think it's all about, additionally, making it about other people and not yourself. And Brian, this is totally random, but literally right before us speaking here, I was just speaking with a collaborator of mine who I've been talking to, another solopreneur for a while, and just before this call, I was speaking to him, and he paid me the highest compliment ever, which is that and he said that there's so much doom and gloom on LinkedIn in terms of, yes, it's a very difficult job market, and there's a lot of personal and professional things that people are navigating. But he said that when I see just your name pop up in my feed, that I just smile. And that is like the highest compliment that anybody could pay me, alongside yours, Brian, just now. It is just that he knows that no matter what is going to pop up below my name in this feed, that he knows it's going to be positive. He knows it's going to be sometimes funny. He knows it can be sometimes personal with my family and my kids and family life. It could even be about, the work I'm doing, but whatever it is, that my whole goal is trying to be a positive force out there. And I have absolutely no shame in laughing at myself, Brian. I walk into every dad joke door that I can. And so, but that I think honestly was so touching for me to hear, that I can have that impact on people. And I think, and everybody has that opportunity, and ability to share themselves in whatever way is authentic to them. That's just authentic to me. And that's just who I am.
Yeah, I love that. And it is very worthy praise for you, Adam. So I'm not surprised at all that so many people are recognizing that about you. I feel like a big part of it, though, is that I very much felt this way, and I've said this on the air, and I feel like you're doing this on LinkedIn as well, is that with the advent of AI and the mass adoption of AI, and we see everybody's using AI in so many different ways, I've always very much felt like, ooh, great, this is going to help me stand out, because if everybody else is using AI, I am just showing up on air as the way that I am, and so you can't replace that, and that's how I feel about your content. That said, of course, we are not Luddites, we are not stuck in the past, we are also using AI to our advantages. I would imagine that your industry, whether we talk PR, whether we talk the broader world of communications, there's so much that AI can help with. How is AI affecting and helping your work?
AI makes me bigger, faster, stronger all day, every day. And I think there's a lot, and I'm no expert in it. I am first to say I'm no expert in it. There's so many more ways that I need to explore using it. But I certainly am part of the slice of the pie, Brian, that has adopted it, embraced it, both for my own work, both from an entrepreneurial efficiency perspective, but also for my client work. And that's what's really been awesome for me is being able to be on the forefront and even sharing with other communicators how they could be using AI in their everyday client practices. But I who use AI and use it powerfully can. So it's kind of in the same vein where I just use it to enhance myself. I don't use it to replace myself, or every piece of content I put out, whether it's a post on LinkedIn or it's a proposal I send to the client, or it's a messaging matrix and framework that I'm putting together it's always got to pass the human sniff test. And I always give it one to make sure that no matter how I incorporate AI into my workflow, that at the end of the day, the AI-ness doesn't come through. It's got to be human at the end of the day. But AI certainly makes it a lot more efficient and possible. And even I love using AI to even counter and help and kind of be the devil on the shoulder in terms of how I could do my work better and challenge it to poke holes in my thinking and approaches and whatnot. So lots of opportunities in that space for sure.
Yeah, well said, Adam. Even to the point where when you post a picture in a purple Rapunzel wig, I know that it's not AI. That's you actually rocking that on your LinkedIn.
I have it. Yeah, don't make me get it, Brian. Don't make me get it.
Adam, I'm loving it. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot one last time because I knew that time would fly by with you here today, but I always ask a super broad question because it's fun to see which direction my guests take it in, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? I feel like we already went into so much goodness here in today's episode, but remember that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. And as a fellow entrepreneur yourself, what's that one thing that you want to leave them with today?
Commit to yourself in whatever way that speaks to you or the way that you interpret it, and go all in whatever you believe in and follow the intuition. And through that, you can't go wrong.
Yes, so well said. Important advice. Adam, I actually think that's advice that we need to hear not just once, not just twice, but we probably need it to hit us every single day, because it is easy in those tough moments to say, dang, do I want to persist? Is this worth it? Are there other options? But you are such a testament to what consistent, disciplined, focused action can accomplish. So super appreciative of all the great things that you're putting into the world and the way that you've shown up here in this conversation and episode with us. So for listeners who want to see all this goodness that you and I are kind of teasing, whether it's your LinkedIn, whether it's everything you're up to with A to B strategies, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me, Adam Belmont, and always down for a chat, and I'm always active there. And whether it's with potential clients or just collaborators or in or out of the industry, from a solopreneur, entrepreneurial perspective, always happy to lend a hand. And also ask for, I'll ask my own for support myself, because I've only been doing this for a year. So I certainly don't have all the answers, but I love being on the journey with like-minded individuals.
Yes, I love that. Adam, none of us have any of the answers. That's the truth. I'm 17 years into this journey, and every single week I'm just like, let's do new things. Let's start from scratch and try completely new things that we've never experienced before. So listeners, you heard it from Adam himself, how easy it is to have him in your network, how easy it is to continue the conversation with him. Do not be shy. It's also free to follow someone on LinkedIn. So definitely check out the links down below in the show notes. We're linking directly to Adam's personal LinkedIn, so you don't have to go hunting. I would imagine there's quite a few Adam Belmonts out there. So listeners, definitely check the show notes. Otherwise, Adam, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Brian. It's been great chatting with you. So thanks for having me on.